Have you ever noticed how a man's behavior changes in subtle but unmistakable ways when he's on the verge of falling in love? Not the obvious gestures, not the grand declarations, but the quiet, almost unconscious shifts that reveal what's happening in his heart before he even realizes it himself. If you're a woman who's lived enough life to recognize patterns, who's developed the wisdom to read between the lines, then you already know that men reveal their deepest feelings not through their words, but through a language far more honest. Their actions, their choices, the way they show up when they think nobody's watching. Today, we're going to decode that language together, and by the end of this journey, you'll never miss these signs again. Welcome back to the Heart Code, where we explore the deeper truths about love, relationships, and the psychology that governs human connection. If this is your first time here, you've just discovered a space dedicated to empowering mature women with the insights, wisdom, and psychological understanding you deserve. Before we dive deep into today's topic, I want to ask you for your support. If you find value in this content, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences, and share this with other women who might benefit from these insights. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our content. And if you really want to support the work we do here, consider using the Super Thanks button below this video. Your support allows us to continue creating in-depth, meaningful content that truly serves you. Now, let's explore something fascinating. What does a man's behavior reveal before he falls in love? More importantly, what do these reveals tell you about whether this is a man worth your time, your energy, and your heart? The question of what a man's behavior reveals before he falls in love is not just about romance or attraction. It's about understanding the psychological processes that govern how men experience emotional connection, how they process vulnerability, and how they navigate the terrifying and exhilarating territory of opening their hearts. For women who've accumulated years of life experience, who've been through relationships that taught them hard lessons, this knowledge becomes a form of protection and empowerment. It allows you to distinguish between a man who's genuinely developing deep feelings and one who's simply going through the motions. It helps you identify whether you're dealing with someone capable of mature love or someone still operating from ego, fear, or superficial attraction. Let's start with something fundamental that many women overlook. Before a man falls in love, before he even consciously recognizes his own feelings, his behavior begins to shift in ways that reflect an internal reorganization of his priorities and values. This isn't manipulation or strategy on his part. It's the natural consequence of his emotional and psychological systems responding to something significant. His nervous system is registering that you matter. His attachment system is activating. His brain chemistry is changing. And all of this creates behavioral signatures that you can read if you know what to look for. The first and perhaps most telling sign is the shift in his attention, not the superficial attention of early attraction, where a man is simply intrigued or physically drawn to you, but a deeper, more sustained quality of attention that indicates you've begun occupying mental and emotional space in his inner world. Before a man falls in love, he starts thinking about you when you're not around. This manifests in specific, observable behaviors. He remembers details from your conversations, not just the big things, but the small things. The offhand comment you made about your favorite childhood book, the story you told about your sister, the way you take your coffee. These details lodge in his mind because his brain has categorized you as significant, as worthy of deep encoding. When a man is moving toward love, his memory for you becomes sharper, more nuanced, more comprehensive. He'll reference things you said weeks ago. He'll surprise you by remembering preferences you barely remember mentioning. This isn't a conscious effort to impress you, though it certainly can have that effect. It's the natural byproduct of his mind paying a different quality of attention. His reticular activating system, the part of the brain that filters what information gets priority, has essentially upgraded your status. You've moved from background noise to signal, from peripheral to central. And this shift in how his brain processes information about you creates a cascade of behavioral changes. He becomes curious about you in ways that go beyond surface-level attraction. Before a man falls in love, his questions change. They become deeper, more thoughtful, more focused on understanding who you really are beneath the social presentation. He wants to know about your history, your wounds, your dreams, your fears. He wants to understand what shaped you, what matters to you, what drives you. This curiosity isn't interrogation, it's exploration. It's the kind of genuine interest that makes you feel seen in ways that might actually be uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to men who only want to know enough to get what they want from you. This deep curiosity manifests in how he listens. Before a man falls in love, his listening quality changes dramatically. He's not waiting for his turn to talk. He's not formulating responses while you're speaking. He's not half present, distracted by his phone or his own thoughts. He's fully engaged, absorbing what you're saying, asking follow-up questions that demonstrate he's actually processing your words at a meaningful level. You can see it in his body language. His orientation toward you becomes more direct. His eye contact becomes more sustained. His facial expressions respond to the emotional content of what you're sharing, not just the informational content. Another crucial behavioral reveal before a man falls in love is the shift in how he manages his time and priorities. Men, especially mature men who've established their lives, careers, and routines, are generally protective of their time and energy. They've learned what they value, what they enjoy, and what they're not willing to compromise on. But when a man is moving toward love, you'll notice him becoming increasingly flexible with these boundaries, not in a way that suggests he's abandoning himself, but in a way that reveals you're becoming integrated into his value system. He starts making time for you without it feeling like a sacrifice or an imposition. He rearranges his schedule. He carves out space in his week. He chooses spending time with you over other activities that previously held priority. And here's the key distinction that separates genuine feeling from manipulation. When a man is genuinely falling in love, this reprioritization feels natural to him. It doesn't feel like he's giving something up. It feels like he's gaining something valuable. He's not keeping score. He's not making you feel guilty or indebted. He's not holding his time and attention over you as leverage. He's simply choosing you because choosing you has become what he wants to do. Watch how he treats plans with you. A man who's developing genuine feelings becomes increasingly reliable and consistent. He doesn't cancel at the last minute unless there's a genuine emergency. He doesn't leave you hanging or wondering whether he's actually going to show up. He doesn't play games with your time or keep you guessing about his interest. When he makes a commitment to see you, that commitment means something to him because you mean something to him. His word becomes his bond, not because he's trying to impress you with how dependable he is, but because disappointing you or letting you down genuinely bothers him. Before a man falls in love, you'll also notice changes in how he communicates with you. The frequency, quality, and emotional depth of his communication all shift. He reaches out more regularly. He initiates contact without always having a specific reason or agenda. He shares things with you throughout his day, not because he needs something from you, but because you've become someone he wants to share his life with. A funny observation he made, a frustration at work, a success he's proud of, a memory that surfaced. These small communications, these regular check-ins, reveal that you're occupying mental space in his daily experience. The tone of his communication becomes warmer, more personal, more emotionally available. He stops hiding behind emotional distance or masculine stoicism. He allows himself to be more expressive, more vulnerable, more real. He shares his feelings, his struggles, his uncertainties, not in a way that makes you his therapist or emotional caretaker, but in a way that reflects genuine emotional intimacy. He trusts you with parts of himself that he doesn't show to everyone. And this trust, this willingness to be seen in his full humanity, is one of the most powerful indicators that his feelings are deepening. Pay attention to how he responds when you share your own vulnerabilities. Before a man falls in love, his capacity for empathy and emotional support expands significantly. He doesn't minimize your feelings or try to fix your problems when you just need to be heard. He doesn't make your emotional experiences about him. He doesn't withdraw or become uncomfortable when you express pain, sadness, or frustration. Instead, he moves toward you emotionally. He offers presence, understanding, validation. He shows up for you in your difficult moments without making you feel like a burden. This emotional availability, this capacity to hold space for your full humanity, reveals that he's developing the kind of deep care that characterizes genuine love. Another behavioral reveal that's particularly telling is how a man treats your independence and autonomy before he falls in love. Contrary to what popular culture might suggest, a man who's genuinely developing deep feelings doesn't become possessive, controlling, or threatened by your independence. He becomes more supportive of it. He encourages your growth, your pursuits, your friendships, your alone time. He doesn't try to absorb all your attention or make himself the center of your universe. He recognizes that your wholeness, your completeness as an individual, is part of what draws him to you. When a man is moving toward mature love, he respects your boundaries without making you fight for them. He doesn't push when you need space. He doesn't guilt you for having a life that doesn't revolve around him. He doesn't interpret your independence as rejection or lack of interest. Instead, he trusts the connection between you enough to give it room to breathe. He understands that healthy love isn't about merging into one entity or losing yourselves in each other. It's about two whole people choosing to share their lives while maintaining their individual identities. Watch how he talks about your future, both individually and potentially together. Before a man falls in love, his mental timeline begins to extend beyond the immediate present. He starts thinking in terms of months and years rather than days and weeks. He makes plans that include you naturally, without pressure or premature commitment. He talks about trips he'd like to take with you. He mentions events months away and assumes you'll still be in his life. He considers how decisions he makes now might affect a potential future with you. This forward-thinking orientation reveals that his brain has begun to categorize you as someone he wants in his life long-term. However, there's an important distinction to make here. A man who's genuinely falling in love doesn't rush the relationship or push for premature commitment. He doesn't pressure you to define the relationship before it's naturally ready to be defined. He doesn't need immediate answers or guarantees. He's comfortable with the organic unfolding of connection because he trusts what's developing between you. He's patient, not because he's playing games or keeping his options open, but because he recognizes that real love needs time to develop roots. He's invested in building something solid rather than rushing toward a destination. The way a man integrates you into his life before he falls in love is another crucial behavioral indicator. He starts wanting you to meet the people who matter to him, his friends, his family, his colleagues. This integration isn't about showing you off or proving something. It's about the natural human desire to have the different parts of our lives connect. When someone becomes important to us, he wants the people he cares about to know you. He wants you to understand the context of his life. He wants to see how you interact with his world and how his world responds to you. Pay attention to how he introduces you and talks about you to others. Before a man falls in love, the way he frames your presence in his life shifts. He speaks about you with warmth, respect, and genuine affection. He highlights your qualities, your accomplishments, your character. He doesn't diminish you or make jokes at your expense. He doesn't keep you compartmentalized or hidden. He's proud to have you in his life, and that pride shows in how he represents you to others. His words and his energy when talking about you reveal how he truly feels, often more honestly than he might express directly to you. Another subtle but significant behavioral reveal is how a man handles conflict or disagreement before he falls in love. When feelings are deepening, his approach to navigating differences changes. He doesn't shut down, stonewall, or disappear when there's tension between you. He doesn't escalate conflicts or turn disagreements into battles. Instead, he demonstrates a capacity for repair, for working through difficulties, for finding resolution. He can acknowledge when he's wrong. He can apologize genuinely. He can hear your perspective even when it challenges his own. He values the relationship enough to do the uncomfortable work of navigating conflict constructively. This doesn't mean he becomes a doormat or abandons his own needs and boundaries. It means he's able to hold both his truth and yours simultaneously. He can disagree with you without disrespecting you. He can stand firm in his boundaries while still remaining emotionally connected. He understands that conflict is a normal part of any intimate relationship, and his willingness to engage with it maturely reveals that he's thinking about this relationship as something worth maintaining and protecting. Watch how he behaves when you're upset with him or disappointed by something he's done. A man who's developing genuine feelings takes your feelings seriously. He doesn't dismiss your concerns or gaslight you into doubting your perceptions. He doesn't make himself the victim when you're expressing legitimate hurt or frustration. He listens. He reflects. He takes responsibility for his impact, even if his intention was good. He makes genuine efforts to understand your experience and adjust his behavior accordingly. This responsiveness to your emotional reality reveals a depth of care that goes beyond surface attraction. Before a man falls in love, you'll also notice changes in his physical affection and intimacy. This is nuanced territory because every man and every relationship is different, but there are general patterns worth noting. When feelings deepen, physical affection often becomes more varied, more tender, more focused on connection rather than purely sexual expression. He touches you more softly, more frequently, in ways that communicate care and affection rather than desire. He holds your hand. He touches your face. He pulls you close in quiet moments. He kisses your forehead. He finds excuses for physical closeness that have nothing to do with sex. If the relationship has a sexual component, you may notice that his approach to intimacy becomes more attuned to you, more focused on mutual pleasure and emotional connection, rather than just physical release. He pays attention to what you like, what makes you feel good, what helps you feel safe and cherished. He's patient. He's present. He creates space for vulnerability and emotional intimacy alongside physical intimacy. Sex becomes less about conquest or performance and more about genuine sharing and connection. This shift reveals that you're becoming a whole person to him, not just a body or a fantasy, but someone whose emotional and physical experience matters deeply. Another behavioral pattern that emerges before a man falls in love is increased protectiveness and care for your well-being, not in a controlling or patriarchal way, but in a genuine concern for your safety, health, and happiness. He notices when you're tired and encourages you to rest. He checks in about your stress levels. He asks if you've eaten when you've been busy. He offers help when you're overwhelmed without making you feel incapable or incompetent. He worries about you when you're driving home late or traveling alone. He wants to know that you're okay, that you're taking care of yourself, that you're not carrying burdens you don't need to carry alone. This protectiveness extends to how he responds when other people treat you poorly or disrespectfully. A man who's falling in love doesn't tolerate others diminishing you, criticizing you unfairly, or crossing your boundaries. He stands up for you. He has your back. He makes it clear through his words and actions that you're someone who deserves respect and consideration. This doesn't mean he fights your battles for you or treats you like you can't handle yourself. It means he's genuinely bothered when you're mistreated, and he's willing to speak up or intervene in appropriate ways. Watch how he responds to your successes and accomplishments. Before a man falls in love, your wins become his wins. He's genuinely happy for you when good things happen in your life. He celebrates your achievements without feeling threatened or competitive. He doesn't downplay your successes or redirect attention to himself. He doesn't feel diminished by your growth or accomplishments. Instead, he's proud of you. He brags about you to others. He supports your ambitions and encourages you to pursue your goals. This genuine celebration of who you are and what you achieve reveals a secure, mature love that wants you to flourish rather than shrink. Similarly, pay attention to how he responds when you're struggling or facing challenges. Does he minimize your difficulties or tell you to just get over it? Does he offer unsolicited advice or try to fix everything for you? Or does he offer the kind of support that actually helps? A man who's developing deep feelings understands that sometimes you need practical help. Sometimes you need emotional support, and sometimes you just need someone to sit with you in your struggle without trying to make it better. He learns to read what you need and provides it without making your challenges about him or his ability to rescue you. Another crucial behavioral reveal is how a man handles his own emotions before he falls in love. Many men are taught from a young age to suppress, deny, or compartmentalize their feelings, especially the vulnerable ones. But when a man is falling in love, this emotional armor starts to come down. He becomes more willing to acknowledge and express what he's feeling. He stops pretending he's always fine or always in control. He lets you see his uncertainty, his nervousness about the relationship, his fear of getting hurt, his hope for what might develop between you. This emotional honesty is profound because it represents a fundamental shift in how he relates to himself and to you. He's choosing vulnerability over protection. He's choosing authenticity over the safety of emotional distance. He's trusting you with parts of himself that he normally keeps hidden. And this trust, this willingness to be emotionally naked with you, is one of the clearest indicators that his feelings have moved beyond casual interest into something deeper and more significant. Before a man falls in love, you'll also notice that he becomes increasingly attuned to your moods, your energy, your emotional state. He picks up on subtle shifts in how you're feeling. He can tell when something's bothering you even when you haven't said anything. He notices when you're not quite yourself. He reads your body language, your tone of voice, your energy, and he responds to what he perceives with care and concern. He asks if you're okay. He creates space for you to share what's going on if you want to. He adjusts his behavior based on what you seem to need in the moment. This attunement reveals that you've become a priority in his emotional awareness. His nervous system is tracking you, reading you, responding to you. This isn't about him trying to control or manage your emotions. It's about the natural human tendency to become highly attuned to people who matter to us. When someone is important, we naturally pay closer attention to their state of being. We become more sensitive to their cues. We develop what's essentially an emotional radar for them. And when you notice a man developing this kind of attunement to you, it's a strong indicator that his feelings are deepening. Watch how he talks about past relationships before he falls in love. This is revealing on multiple levels. First, the fact that he's willing to discuss his relationship history with you indicates a level of trust and openness. He's not hiding his past or pretending he emerged fully formed without any previous attachments or heartbreaks. Second, how he talks about his exes reveals his level of emotional maturity and his capacity for taking responsibility. Does he blame all his exes for everything that went wrong? Does he paint himself as the perpetual victim? Or does he demonstrate the kind of reflection and self-awareness that comes from doing genuine emotional work? A man who's capable of mature love acknowledges his own role in past relationship failures. He can talk about what he learned from previous partnerships. He can recognize patterns in his behavior that didn't serve him or his partners. He can express genuine remorse for ways he hurt people, even if the relationship ultimately wasn't right. This level of self-awareness and accountability reveals that he's someone who's grown from his experiences rather than just accumulated resentments and defensive narratives. Another important aspect of how he discusses past relationships is whether he seems emotionally complete with his history or whether he's still carrying active wounds or unresolved feelings. A man who's truly available for a new relationship has processed his past. He's grieved what needed to be grieved. He's learned what needed to be learned. He's forgiven what needed to be forgiven, including himself. He can talk about his history without getting emotionally activated or defensive. His past informs his present, but it doesn't control it. This emotional completion is essential for anyone capable of building a healthy new relationship. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around exclusivity and commitment begins to shift naturally. Without necessarily putting formal labels on the relationship, he starts operating as if you're the person he's choosing. He's not actively pursuing other women. He's not keeping his options open or hedging his bets. He's not maintaining multiple romantic connections while seeing where things go with you. His attention, his energy, his romantic and sexual interest become focused on you. This exclusivity emerges organically from his growing feelings, not from pressure or obligation. When the conversation about defining the relationship eventually happens, a man who's falling in love approaches it with clarity and intention. He's not confused about what he wants. He's not wishy-washy or unable to commit. He doesn't need to be convinced or persuaded. He's ready and willing to acknowledge what's developing between you and to move forward accordingly. This readiness doesn't mean he's rushing or pushing for commitment before the relationship is ready for it. It means that when the timing is right, he steps up without hesitation or ambivalence. Pay attention to how he handles his personal growth and development before he falls in love. Does he remain stagnant and resistant to change, expecting you to accept him exactly as he is with no room for evolution? Or does he demonstrate a commitment to his own growth? A man who's capable of mature love understands that relationships require us to stretch, to challenge ourselves, to become better versions of who we are. He's willing to examine his patterns, address his issues, work on his emotional availability, develop his communication skills, and grow in ways that serve both himself and the relationship. This doesn't mean he's trying to become someone he's not to please you. It means he recognizes that love calls us to our higher selves, to our most evolved and conscious expression. He's willing to do that work not because you're demanding it, but because he values what's developing between you, enough to show up as his best self. He might seek therapy. He might read books on relationships and communication. He might have conversations with trusted friends or mentors about how to navigate what he's feeling. This investment in his own growth reveals the depth of his commitment to building something real with you. Another behavioral pattern that emerges before a man falls in love is his increased investment in creating shared experiences and memories with you. He plans dates that are thoughtful and meaningful. He suggests activities that allow you to connect, discover each other, and build a shared history. He's not just trying to fill time or keep you entertained. He's consciously creating the foundation of a relationship through experiences that matter. He wants to explore new places with you, try new things with you, create stories that become part of your shared narrative. This investment in shared experiences reveals that he's thinking beyond the present moment. He's building something. He's creating a relationship that has substance, depth, and history. He understands that love isn't just a feeling. It's also a collection of moments, experiences, and memories that bind two people together. And he's actively engaged in creating those binding moments with you. Watch how he handles stress, challenges, and difficult periods in his own life before he falls in love. Does he pull away and shut you out when things get hard? Does he disappear when he's dealing with pressure? Or does he allow you to be part of his life, even when things aren't perfect? A man who's developing deep feelings doesn't compartmentalize you into the fun times only category. He lets you see him in his struggles. He allows you to support him when he needs it. He trusts you enough to be less than perfect, less than strong, less than completely together. This willingness to be seen in difficulty, to allow you into the messy parts of his life, reveals a profound level of trust and intimacy. It shows that he's not performing for you or trying to maintain a facade. He's letting you see his full humanity, including the parts that aren't polished or impressive. And this authentic sharing of his whole self is one of the clearest indicators that his feelings have evolved into something genuine and deep. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around your comfort and happiness becomes increasingly considerate. He notices what makes you feel good and tries to create more of those conditions. He pays attention to your preferences and incorporates them into how he interacts with you. He remembers that you get cold easily and brings you a sweater. He knows you love a particular kind of food and makes sure it's available when you're together. He creates an environment where you can relax and be yourself. This thoughtfulness isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about the daily attentiveness that makes someone feel cared for and valued. This consideration extends to respecting your needs, your boundaries, your preferences. He doesn't pressure you to move faster than you're comfortable with, emotionally or physically. He doesn't dismiss your boundaries as silly or unnecessary. He doesn't try to negotiate or manipulate you out of your limits. He respects your no as much as he appreciates your yes. He understands that true intimacy is built on mutual respect and consent, not on pushing past resistance or overriding someone's expressed needs. Another subtle but significant behavioral reveal is how a man handles your independence and your relationships with others before he falls in love. A secure man who's developing genuine feelings doesn't try to isolate you or monopolize all your time and attention. He encourages your friendships. He supports your relationship with your family. He's glad you have a full life that includes other important people. He doesn't feel threatened by your other connections or try to position himself as the only person who matters. Instead, he recognizes that your other relationships are part of what makes you who you are, and he values the whole package. He's also comfortable in social situations with your friends and family. He makes an effort to connect with the people who are important to you. He shows genuine interest in them, not because he's performing for your benefit, but because understanding your world means understanding the people in it. He can engage with your friends without competing for attention or trying to impress them. He's comfortable being seen as part of your life by the people who know you best. Before a man falls in love, you'll also notice changes in how he handles practical matters and daily life logistics. He becomes more helpful, more supportive, more engaged in the practical aspects of your life together. He offers to help with tasks that need doing. He participates in planning and organizing. He takes initiative rather than waiting to be asked or told. He shares responsibility naturally because he's beginning to think of your well-being and your life as connected to his own. This practical support reveals a shift from individualistic thinking to relational thinking. He's no longer just considering his own needs, preferences, and convenience. He's factoring you into his decisions and his actions. He thinks about how his choices affect you. He considers what would make your life easier or better. He operates with a growing awareness that his life and yours are becoming intertwined, and he adjusts his behavior accordingly. Watch how he responds to your vulnerabilities and insecurities before he falls in love. When you share your fears, your doubts, your areas of sensitivity, does he use that information against you later? Does he dismiss your feelings or tell you you're being irrational? Or does he handle your vulnerabilities with care and respect? A man who's developing deep feelings treats your soft spots gently. He doesn't exploit your insecurities for his own benefit. He doesn't weaponize your vulnerabilities during arguments. He doesn't make you feel ashamed or foolish for having human struggles and uncertainties. Instead, he offers reassurance without being patronizing. He validates your feelings without encouraging unhealthy patterns. He helps you feel safe being fully yourself, including the parts of yourself you might normally hide or protect. This emotional safety, this sense that you can be vulnerable without being hurt or diminished, is one of the most precious gifts a partner can offer. And when a man demonstrates this capacity before he's even consciously aware he's falling in love, it's a powerful indicator of his character and his potential as a long-term partner. Another behavioral reveal that's particularly significant is how a man handles your success and growth before he falls in love. Some men feel threatened when a woman excels, achieves, or outshines them in some way. Their ego can't handle not being the star or the one with the most impressive accomplishments. But a man who's capable of mature love celebrates your success without reservation. He's not diminished by your achievements. He doesn't need to compete with you or establish his superiority. He's genuinely proud of you and happy for you when you succeed. This secure response to your success reveals several important things about his character. First, it shows he has a strong enough sense of self that he doesn't need to be the best or the most accomplished to feel valuable. Second, it demonstrates that he sees the relationship as a partnership rather than a competition. Third, it reveals that he wants you to flourish and become the fullest expression of yourself rather than shrinking to make him feel more comfortable. This kind of emotional security and genuine support for your growth is essential in a healthy long-term relationship. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around conflict resolution and repair becomes increasingly mature and constructive. He doesn't let resentments build or issues fester. He addresses problems when they arise, rather than avoiding them or pretending everything's fine when it's not. He can have difficult conversations without becoming defensive, hostile, or withdrawn. He can acknowledge when he's hurt you, apologize genuinely, and make real efforts to change the behavior that caused the hurt. This capacity for repair, for working through ruptures in connection, is absolutely essential for long-term relationship success. No two people can be together without occasionally hurting each other, misunderstanding each other, or disappointing each other. What matters is whether both people can navigate those inevitable difficulties with grace, maturity, and genuine care for each other's well-being. When a man demonstrates this capacity early in the relationship, before he's even fully aware of how deeply he feels, it's a strong positive indicator of his relationship readiness and emotional maturity. Pay attention to how he talks about the future more broadly, not just as it relates to you. Is he someone with goals, dreams, and aspirations? Is he actively working toward building the kind of life he wants to live? Or is he drifting through life without direction or intention? A man who's capable of being a true partner has his own sense of purpose and direction. He's not looking for someone to give his life meaning or fix what's broken in his world. He's already engaged in creating a meaningful life, and he's looking for someone to share that life with and build alongside. When a man has this kind of internal direction and purpose, his behavior before falling in love reflects a certain groundedness and stability. He's not desperate for the relationship to fill a void in his life. He's not clinging to you as his sole source of happiness or fulfillment. He has a full life that he's inviting you into, and he's genuinely interested in being invited into yours. This creates a healthier foundation for love than the all-consuming, desperate attachment that sometimes gets romanticized but rarely leads to lasting, healthy relationships. Another behavioral pattern to observe is how a man handles his responsibilities and commitments before he falls in love. Is he reliable in his work? Does he maintain his friendships? Does he honor his obligations? Does he follow through on what he says he'll do? Or does he have a pattern of flaking, making excuses, and letting people down? How a man handles his existing commitments and responsibilities is often a preview of how he'll handle his commitment to you. If he's consistently unreliable, irresponsible, or unable to follow through, that pattern is unlikely to change just because he has feelings for you. Conversely, a man who demonstrates reliability, responsibility, and follow-through in the rest of his life is showing you that he's capable of maintaining commitments even when it's inconvenient or difficult. This character trait becomes especially important as a relationship deepens and faces the inevitable challenges and stresses of life. You want a partner who shows up consistently, who keeps his word, who can be counted on. And you can assess this quality by observing how he operates in all areas of his life, not just in his relationship with you. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around communication patterns often shifts significantly. He becomes more open to feedback and more willing to adjust his communication style to better connect with you. He notices if something he says or does creates misunderstanding or hurt, and he makes efforts to communicate more clearly or sensitively. He asks questions to ensure he's understanding you correctly. He checks in about how you're receiving what he's sharing. He creates a communication dynamic that feels collaborative rather than combative. This willingness to work on communication reveals emotional maturity and relational intelligence. He understands that good communication doesn't just happen automatically between two people. It requires effort, attention, and willingness to adapt and grow. He's not rigidly attached to his own communication style or defensive when you need something different from him. He's flexible and responsive because creating genuine understanding matters more to him than being right or having things his way. Watch how he handles your emotional needs before he falls in love. Does he dismiss them as excessive or unreasonable? Does he make you feel like you're too much or too needy? Or does he take your needs seriously and make genuine efforts to meet them when he can? A man who's developing deep feelings understands that everyone has emotional needs, and meeting those needs is part of what creates intimacy and connection in relationships. He doesn't shame you for having needs. He doesn't act like caring for your emotional well-being is a burden or an imposition. This doesn't mean he becomes responsible for your emotional state or that he can or should meet every need you have. It means he takes your emotional reality seriously and considers it in how he shows up in the relationship. He recognizes that emotional attunement and responsiveness are essential components of healthy love, and he's willing to stretch himself to provide emotional support and care because your happiness and well-being genuinely matter to him. Another crucial behavioral indicator is how a man handles his own growth edges and challenges before he falls in love. Does he acknowledge areas where he struggles or needs to develop? Can he admit when he doesn't know something or when he's made a mistake? Or does he maintain a facade of having everything figured out and never being wrong? A man who's capable of genuine intimacy can be humble about his limitations and honest about his ongoing growth process. He doesn't pretend to be perfect or complete. He acknowledges that he's still learning, still developing, still working on becoming his best self. This humility and self-awareness creates space for authentic connection. You can't truly know someone who's always performing perfection or hiding their struggles. Real intimacy requires mutual vulnerability and honesty about our full humanity, including our flaws, our fears, and our areas of ongoing development. When a man can bring this level of authenticity to the relationship before he's even consciously aware of falling in love, it indicates a depth of character and emotional capacity that bodes well for long-term relational success. Before a man falls in love, you'll notice his investment in understanding you deepens significantly. He doesn't just accept surface-level information about who you are. He wants to understand your motivations, your values, your worldview. He asks thoughtful questions that reveal he's trying to grasp not just what you do or what you like, but why. Why does that matter to you? What shaped that belief? How did you come to value that? This deeper inquiry reveals a genuine interest in understanding you as a complex, nuanced human being, rather than as a simplified version that fits his expectations or fantasies. This kind of deep understanding requires patience, attention, and genuine curiosity. It can't be rushed or manufactured. It develops over time as two people share their inner worlds with each other and really listen to what's being shared. A man who's falling in love invests in this process willingly and enthusiastically. He's not going through the motions of getting to know you. He's genuinely fascinated by who you are, and that fascination motivates him to keep exploring, keep asking, keep learning about you. Pay attention to how he handles differences between you before he falls in love. Every two people have differences in personality, preferences, values, communication styles, and approaches to life. The question isn't whether differences exist, but how they're navigated. Does he try to change you or convince you to be more like him? Does he judge or criticize your differences, or does he approach your differences with curiosity and appreciation? A man who's developing mature feelings recognizes that differences can be enriching rather than problematic. He's interested in understanding your perspective even when it differs from his own. He can appreciate qualities in you that he doesn't share without feeling threatened or dismissive. This appreciation for difference, this ability to honor who you are even when it's different from who he is, reveals emotional maturity and relational capacity. It shows he's not trying to mold you into some idealized version that exists only in his imagination. He's interested in the real you, complete with all the ways you're different from him and maybe different from anyone else he's known. This authentic appreciation creates the foundation for a relationship where both people can be fully themselves rather than having to perform or adapt to be acceptable. Another behavioral reveal before a man falls in love is how he handles his own emotional regulation. Does he expect you to manage his emotions for him? Does he become volatile, unpredictable, or emotionally unstable in ways that make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells? Or does he take responsibility for his own emotional state while remaining emotionally available and connected? A man who's capable of healthy love has developed the ability to feel and process his emotions without making them your problem to solve. He can be sad without needing you to fix it. He can be angry without taking it out on you. He can be anxious without making you responsible for soothing him. This emotional self-regulation doesn't mean he never needs support or never shares his feelings with you. It means he understands the difference between sharing his emotional experience and dumping his emotional chaos on you. He maintains his own emotional center while remaining open and connected to you. This balance between emotional availability and emotional responsibility is essential for healthy relationship dynamics. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around physical presence and quality time shifts notably. He's not just occupying the same space as you, while being mentally or emotionally elsewhere. When he's with you, he's truly present. His phone isn't dominating his attention. He's not constantly distracted or thinking about what he needs to do next. He's engaged, attentive, and focused on the shared experience of being together. This quality of presence makes you feel valued and seen in a way that superficial attention never can. This presence extends to how he creates time for connection. Even in busy schedules, he prioritizes quality time together. He protects the time you've set aside to be together from intrusions and distractions. He creates moments of genuine connection even in brief encounters. A quick phone call just to hear your voice, a thoughtful text message, a few minutes of focused conversation before rushing off to the next obligation. These small moments of intentional connection reveal that you're a priority in his life, not just another item on his to-do list. Watch how he responds to your growth and changes before he falls in love. You're not a static person. You're constantly evolving, learning, growing, changing. Your interests might shift. Your perspectives might deepen or transform. Your goals might evolve. The question is whether he can embrace your evolution or whether he needs you to stay exactly as you were when he first met you. A man who's capable of mature, lasting love understands that change is inevitable and that personal growth is something to be celebrated, not resisted. He encourages your evolution. He supports new interests and pursuits. He's excited to discover new dimensions of who you are as you continue to grow and develop. He doesn't punish you for changing or try to keep you locked in some previous version of yourself that he found less threatening or more convenient. This flexibility and appreciation for your ongoing development reveals a relational maturity that's essential for long-term partnership. Another important behavioral indicator is how a man handles his relationship with money and resources before he falls in love. This isn't about how much money he has or how lavishly he spends on you. It's about his underlying relationship with resources and how he manages what he has. Is he responsible with money? Does he live within his means? Does he plan for the future, or is he reckless, constantly in financial crisis, unable to manage basic adult responsibilities around money? How he handles money reveals a lot about his maturity, his self-discipline, his ability to delay gratification, and his capacity to plan for the future. It also reveals how he might handle shared resources in a relationship. If he's irresponsible with his own money, he's unlikely to suddenly become responsible with shared finances. If he's generous and thoughtful about how he uses his resources, that generosity and thoughtfulness will likely extend to how he operates in a partnership. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around your opinions and perspectives shifts. He genuinely wants to know what you think about things. He values your input and insights. He consults you on decisions, not because he needs permission, but because your perspective matters to him and he wants to consider it. He doesn't dismiss your opinions or talk over you. He doesn't treat you like you couldn't possibly understand complex topics. He engages with your ideas respectfully and thoughtfully, even when he disagrees. This intellectual respect is crucial for long-term compatibility. You don't want a partner who patronizes you or treats you like you're intellectually inferior. You want someone who engages with your mind, who challenges you intellectually, who appreciates your intelligence and insights. When a man demonstrates this kind of intellectual respect before he's even fully aware of his feelings, it's a strong indicator that he sees you as a full equal, a true partner, someone whose mind he values as much as any other aspect of who you are. Pay attention to how he handles his health and self-care before he falls in love. Does he take care of himself physically, mentally, emotionally, or does he neglect his well-being and expect others to pick up the pieces? A man who's capable of being a healthy partner has developed the ability to care for himself. He maintains his physical health. He attends to his mental and emotional well-being. He has healthy coping mechanisms for stress and difficulty. He doesn't rely solely on others to make him feel okay or to manage his well-being for him. This self-care isn't selfishness. It's responsible adulthood. It's recognizing that to show up fully for others, we first need to show up for ourselves. When a man demonstrates this capacity for self-care, it indicates that he's coming to the relationship as a whole person rather than as someone looking for someone else to complete him or fix what's broken. This creates a much healthier foundation for mutual love and support. Another behavioral reveal before a man falls in love is how he handles his relationship with technology and social media. Does he use technology mindfully, or is he constantly distracted and disconnected by his devices? When you're together, does he give you his full attention, or is he constantly checking his phone, responding to messages, or scrolling through feeds? The way a man manages his relationship with technology reveals a lot about his capacity for presence, his priorities, and his ability to be fully engaged with what's in front of him. A man who's developing deep feelings makes an effort to be fully present with you, which often means putting the phone away, silencing notifications, and creating space for undistracted connection. He recognizes that genuine intimacy requires real presence, and real presence is impossible when we're constantly fragmented by digital distractions. His willingness to disconnect from technology to connect with you reveals that you've become more important than whatever might be happening on his screen. Before a man falls in love, you'll also notice shifts in how he talks about his values and what matters to him. He becomes more willing to share his deeper beliefs, his principles, the things he stands for. He opens up about what gives his life meaning, what he cares about, beyond surface-level pleasures or successes. He lets you see his moral framework, his ethical commitments, the causes and concerns that motivate him. This sharing of values reveals a desire for you to know him at the deepest level, to understand what drives him and what he stands for. This values sharing also serves another important function. It allows both of you to assess compatibility at the most fundamental level. Shared values are one of the strongest predictors of long-term relationship success. You can differ in personality, in interests, in communication styles, and still build a strong relationship if your core values align. But if your fundamental values are in conflict, the relationship will likely face ongoing challenges no matter how strong the attraction or affection might be. When a man shares his values openly, he's giving you the information you need to make an informed decision about whether this is a good match. Watch how he responds when you set boundaries or say no to something before he falls in love. This is absolutely crucial. A man who's developing genuine, healthy feelings respects your boundaries completely. He doesn't push back, manipulate, guilt trip, or try to change your mind when you express a limit or decline something. He accepts your no with grace and respect. He doesn't make you feel bad for having boundaries. He doesn't interpret your boundaries as rejection or as obstacles to overcome. This respect for boundaries reveals several essential qualities. First, it shows he sees you as an autonomous person with the right to make your own choices about your body, your time, your energy, and your life. Second, it demonstrates that his care for you includes care for your well-being and comfort, not just his own desires or agendas. Third, it indicates that he's secure enough to handle boundaries without feeling threatened or rejected. This boundary respect is absolutely non-negotiable in a healthy relationship, and when you see it demonstrated early and consistently, it's a powerful positive indicator. Another behavioral pattern that emerges before a man falls in love is increased thoughtfulness in how he shows care and affection. He pays attention to your love language and tries to express care in ways that actually land for you. If you feel loved through quality time, he creates it. If you feel loved through acts of service, he offers help. If you feel loved through words of affirmation, he expresses appreciation and affection verbally. If you feel loved through physical touch, he offers appropriate affection. If you feel loved through gifts, he brings you thoughtful tokens that show he's been thinking of you. This attunement to how you receive love reveals that his care for you is about you, not just about him. He's not just expressing affection in the ways that come naturally to him or that would make him feel loved. He's learning to speak your language, to show care in ways that you can actually receive and feel. This adaptability and thoughtfulness create a much deeper sense of being truly cared for than generic expressions of affection ever could. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around alcohol and substances is also worth observing. How does he handle these things? Does he use them responsibly and in moderation, or does he rely on them heavily to cope with stress, to socialize, to have fun? Does his personality change dramatically when he drinks or uses substances? Does he make poor decisions or become someone different? How a man handles substances reveals a lot about his self-regulation, his coping mechanisms, and his overall relationship with himself and reality. If you notice concerning patterns around substance use, pay close attention. These patterns rarely improve in a relationship and often get worse under the stress and intimacy of partnership. A man who's capable of healthy love has healthy coping mechanisms and doesn't rely on substances to manage his emotional state or to engage with life. This doesn't mean he never drinks or never relaxes with substances, but it means he maintains a healthy, balanced relationship with these things rather than using them as crutches or escape mechanisms. Pay attention to how he handles criticism or feedback before he falls in love. Can he hear constructive feedback without becoming defensive or attacking back? Can he consider that he might be wrong or that there might be a better way to do something? Or does any hint of criticism send him into defensiveness, denial, or counterattack? A man who's capable of growth and healthy relationship dynamics can receive feedback with openness and consideration. He doesn't need to be right all the time. He can acknowledge his mistakes and learn from them. This capacity to receive feedback reveals emotional maturity and secure self-esteem. He's not so fragile that any criticism shatters him. He's not so arrogant that he can't imagine being wrong. He can hold his sense of self while also remaining open to growth and change. This quality becomes increasingly important as relationships deepen and both partners inevitably need to give and receive feedback about how their behavior affects each other. Another behavioral reveal before a man falls in love is how he handles jealousy and insecurity. Does he become possessive or controlling when he feels threatened? Does he try to restrict your interactions with other people? Does he make accusations or create drama based on his own insecurities? Or does he acknowledge his feelings while taking responsibility for managing them in healthy ways? A man who's developing mature feelings might feel jealous occasionally, which is a normal human emotion, but he doesn't let that jealousy control his behavior or become an excuse to control you. He can say, "I notice I'm feeling some jealousy about this situation," while also recognizing that his jealousy is his to manage, not your problem to solve by restricting your life. He can work through his insecurities without making them your burden. He trusts you unless you give him real reason not to. This emotional maturity around jealousy and insecurity is essential for a relationship to thrive, rather than becoming consumed by toxic dynamics. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around planning and follow-through becomes increasingly consistent. He makes plans and keeps them. He says he'll do something and then actually does it. He commits to a time and shows up on time. This reliability might seem like a small thing, but it's actually fundamental. Every time someone says they'll do something and then doesn't follow through, it erodes trust. Every time someone is consistently late or cancels plans, it communicates that your time and the commitment don't really matter that much. A man who's developing deep feelings understands that trust is built through consistent, reliable behavior over time. He shows up when he says he will. He does what he commits to doing. He's reliable not just occasionally, but consistently. This creates a sense of safety and security in the relationship. You know you can count on him. You know his word means something. This foundation of reliability becomes especially important as relationships face inevitable challenges and stresses. Watch how he responds to your family and your history before he falls in love. Is he genuinely interested in understanding where you came from and who shaped you? Does he want to know about your family dynamics, your childhood experiences, your formative relationships? Or does he seem uninterested in your background and history? A man who's falling in love wants to understand your full story. He's curious about what made you who you are. He wants to know about your family, your upbringing, your significant life experiences. This interest in your history serves multiple purposes. It helps him understand you more deeply by providing context for your patterns, your triggers, your strengths, and your struggles. It also demonstrates that he sees you as a whole person with a rich history, not just as a current presence in his life, disconnected from everything that came before. This contextual understanding creates deeper intimacy and connection because it's based on truly knowing someone, not just on surface attraction or compatibility. Another important behavioral indicator is how a man handles conflict with others before he falls in love. How does he treat service workers, customer service representatives, people in positions with less power or status? Does he show kindness and respect across the board, or does he treat people differently based on what they can do for him? How a man treats people who can't benefit him reveals his true character more clearly than how he treats people he's trying to impress or people who hold power over him. Pay attention to how he talks about and treats people in his life. Is he generally respectful and fair? Does he take responsibility for his role in conflicts? Or does he blame others constantly and never seem to be at fault for anything that goes wrong? These patterns of how he relates to people generally will eventually show up in how he relates to you. If he's consistently disrespectful to others, that disrespect will eventually turn your direction, no matter how well he treats you in the beginning. Before a man falls in love, you'll notice his behavior around shared decision-making evolves. He starts naturally consulting you on decisions that affect both of you or that you might have input on. He values your perspective and wants to make decisions collaboratively rather than unilaterally. He doesn't just inform you of decisions he's already made. He involves you in the decision-making process when appropriate. This collaborative approach reveals that he's beginning to think in terms of we rather than just I. This shift toward collaborative decision-making doesn't mean he loses his autonomy or that you control his choices. It means he recognizes that as your lives become more intertwined, Decisions that affect one of you often affect both of you, and it makes sense to consider both perspectives before making those decisions. This partnership orientation, this natural inclination toward collaborative thinking, is essential for healthy long-term relationships. Pay attention to how he handles his relationship with his own family before he falls in love. Is he estranged from everyone, unable to maintain any family connections? Does he have healthy boundaries with his family while maintaining connection? Or is he enmeshed with his family in ways that leave no room for an adult romantic relationship? How a man manages his family relationships reveals a lot about his capacity for healthy attachment, appropriate boundaries, and adult autonomy. Ideally, you want to see someone who has processed their family history, who maintains connection with family members when those relationships are healthy, and has appropriate boundaries with family members when those relationships are challenging. Someone who's completely isolated from all family might be someone who can't maintain relationships. Someone who's completely enmeshed with family might be someone who hasn't fully individuated and become an autonomous adult. The healthy middle ground is maintained connection with appropriate boundaries. Another behavioral reveal before a man falls in love is how he handles power dynamics and decision-making in the relationship. Does he try to dominate or control? Does he need to have the final say on everything? Does he dismiss your input or override your preferences? Or does he approach the relationship as an equal partnership where both people's needs, preferences, and perspectives matter? A man who's capable of healthy love doesn't need to dominate or control his partner. He's comfortable with shared power and collaborative decision-making. This doesn't mean there's no natural leadership or that every decision has to be a long negotiation. It means that fundamentally he sees you as an equal partner whose voice matters as much as his does. He doesn't pull rank or try to establish himself as the authority in the relationship. He respects your autonomy and your equal standing in the partnership. This egalitarian approach is essential for mutual respect and long-term satisfaction in modern relationships. Before a man falls in love, his behavior around showing appreciation and gratitude shifts significantly. He expresses appreciation for things you do, for who you are, for your presence in his life. He doesn't take you for granted or treat your kindness, your care, your presence as his due. He notices when you do something thoughtful or helpful. He acknowledges when you make an effort or sacrifice for him. He says thank you genuinely and specifically. This expression of gratitude reveals that he values you and doesn't assume your care or presence is automatic or owed to him. This appreciation extends beyond specific actions to appreciation for who you are as a person. He expresses that he values your qualities, your character, your presence. He tells you what he appreciates about you. He makes you feel valued and cherished, not just useful or convenient. This genuine appreciation creates an atmosphere of mutual value and respect that strengthens the foundation of the relationship. Watch how he handles his own personal development and growth before he falls in love. Is he stagnant and resistant to change? Does he defend his limitations as just how he is and refuse to work on himself? Or is he actively engaged in his own growth? Does he read, learn, seek therapy or coaching, work on his health, develop new skills? A man who's capable of long-term partnership understands that personal growth is a lifelong process and that relationships thrive when both partners are committed to becoming their best selves. This growth orientation doesn't mean he's fundamentally broken or inadequate. It means he recognizes that there's always room to grow, to learn, to become more skilled at life and love. He's not defensive about his areas of needed growth. He's actively working on them. This commitment to personal development ensures that he brings an ever-evolving, improving self to the relationship rather than asking you to accept a static version that refuses to adapt or grow. As we come to the end of this exploration, I hope you're walking away with a clearer understanding of the subtle but powerful behavioral reveals that indicate a man is on the edge of falling in love. These signs, these patterns, these shifts in behavior are not just random occurrences. They're the external manifestations of deep internal changes happening in his emotional and psychological landscape. When you know how to read these signs, you gain tremendous power. Not the power to manipulate or control, but the power to make informed decisions about who deserves your time, your energy, your heart. You're a woman who's lived enough life to know that your time is precious, your energy is valuable, and your heart is not something to be given carelessly. You deserve a man who demonstrates through his consistent behavior that he's capable of the kind of mature, healthy love that enriches both lives. You deserve someone who shows up fully, who treats you with genuine care and respect, who values you for who you really are, who's willing to do the work that real intimacy requires. Remember that these behavioral reveals are not a checklist where a man needs to demonstrate every single one to be worthy. Every person and every relationship is unique. But the patterns we've discussed today represent the general landscape of how men behave when they're moving from casual interest into genuine deep love. When you see multiple these patterns showing up consistently over time, you can trust that you're dealing with someone whose feelings are real and whose intentions are serious. Equally important is recognizing when these patterns are absent, when a man's behavior doesn't shift, when he remains emotionally distant or unavailable, when he doesn't prioritize you or invest in the relationship, when he doesn't demonstrate care and consideration. Believe what his behavior is telling you. No matter what words he speaks, his actions reveal the truth. And you deserve to be with someone whose actions consistently demonstrate care, respect, investment, and genuine feeling. Before we close, I want to remind you to support this channel so we can continue creating content that serves you. Please like this video if you found it valuable. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your questions. Your engagement helps us understand what topics matter most to you and helps this content reach other women who might benefit from these insights. Share this video with friends or family members who might find it helpful. Subscribe to the Heart Code and turn on notifications so you never miss our content. And if you really want to support the work we do here, please consider clicking the Super Thanks button below this video. Your financial support, no matter how small, makes it possible for us to continue producing the in-depth, thoughtful content you deserve. You are a valuable, worthy, remarkable woman who deserves a love that honors who you are. Don't settle for less than you deserve. Don't ignore red flags or warning signs because you want the relationship to work. Don't abandon your standards or your boundaries to make someone else comfortable. Stand firm in your worth. Trust your wisdom. Honor your experience. And remember that the right person for you will demonstrate through consistent, loving behavior that they recognize your value and are grateful for the gift of your presence in their life. The journey to finding healthy, mature love isn't always easy, especially when you've been through relationships that disappointed or hurt you. But you're not the same woman you were in those past experiences. You've grown, you've learned, you've developed wisdom and discernment. You know more about what you need, what you want, and what you absolutely won't tolerate. Trust that wisdom. Use it to guide your choices, and know that you have the strength, the insight, and the worth to create the kind of love story you truly deserve. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for being part of this community of conscious, intentional, empowered women who are committed to growth, wisdom, and authentic connection. I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue exploring the deeper truths about love, relationships, and the psychology that shapes our most intimate connections. Until then, take care of yourself, honor your worth, and remember that you are deserving of a love that sees you, values you, and chooses you consistently. Goodbye for now.